Good afternoon. I'm Mamta Bharadwaj and I head employer branding at the Nudge Institute. Welcome to another edition of Jigyasa, a platform for you to hear from Nudsters about their experiences solving some of the hardest problems from within the social sector. And as always, we'll give it a few more minutes for a couple more people to join us. So just hang in there, and we'll begin in a few minutes. All right, I think we have people joining in, so we'll begin. Just a little bit about Jigyasa. As an initiative, it seeks to help you unpack the work and life of an individual in the social sector and give you the tools to access the sector as a part of your own professional journey. A little bit about the Nudge Institute. Over 9 years ago, we started with a belief that every human being deserves a dignified life out of poverty. Nudge works on ground through its livelihood programs and its multiple stakeholders across the livelihoods ecosystem. Today, we have Isha from Asha Kiran and Maragathavalli from People and Culture discussing what the term mental health evokes in professionals in the context of a workplace and especially so in the social sector. Now, before we bring them in and get their views on the topic, we would like to do a little quick mood check exercise and hear from our audiences about what they think when they hear mental health and the social sector. So, we'll have a link shared in our comment section. We encourage all of our audiences to click on that link and share what is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear mental health, especially in the context of your professional spaces, your workspace, and more so in the social sector. We'll just have the link added. We have some responses coming in. We have some responses coming in on comments as well. We see peace of mind. We see work pressure. We see stress. We see work-life balance. We see awareness. We see challenging, empathetic, resilience. Great. We have some interesting words coming in. Something for us to pick up as we begin the conversation with Isha and Maggie. Thank you for those responses. And I think we'll pick up on them as we proceed. A little bit to set context. The social sector has been and continues to be a place for purpose driven, high intent professionals who are keen on making a difference through their skills. As a nudster, I can say the natural environment has palpable passion, conviction, and resilience, words that we've seen on the screen today. And this is not unique to the nudge. While I'm sure my colleagues and speakers today, Isha and Maggie, will agree, I would like to invite them to introduce themselves and speak a little to their interest in the social sector and how they view mental health at work, both personally and for the teams they work closely with. Isha, if we may begin with you.
Hey, thank you, Mamta, and thank you all for joining in. Quick introduction, and I hope audible. I'm Isha, and I co-lead the program design for Asha Kiran at the Nudge. Our work focuses on designing interventions that help women build sustainable livelihoods through backyard poultry and goat rearing practices. Now, like Mamta said, mental health is something we all recognize in our personal life and we continuously work towards it. But in the social sector, I feel it's unique and it's unspoken in many ways. And I think before we even acknowledge the words we used about stress, and which was the most bold topic about there, I think it's equally important we talk about the joy and fulfillment that comes with the work. Been there now more than 5 years here, came in from the corporate sector. And I believe I joined in, and many of us here joined in because we believe in something larger than ourselves. We don't do it just for the paycheck, but we actually want to create a real change in people's life. And a key thing which I always used to think is success is measured in numbers and profits in many other sectors. But in here, we actually measure through the change we bring in human lives. And that brings a sense of purpose, sense of fulfillment, satisfaction. And that goes beyond the financial rewards, I feel. There's a sense of joy, pride, to see a Didi, earning her first independent income, getting a child access to that education, or a family breaking out of intergenerational poverty and surviving through the shocks of poverty, right? They are very hard problems. So, are we here just solving problems? We are here to help people. We are here to empower people to help themselves. And I think one word which came across and I resonate with is that watching the communities grow stronger, grow resilient, um, because of what we do is incredibly rewarding. It gives a smile onto my face every time. And I am a big fan of Marvel, so I'll quote something which Spider-Man said. So, with great power comes great responsibility. And I would say that with great purpose comes great energy. And that can be either fueled into some action work and passionate work, but can also add in pressure. So while the work is rewarding, I think there are a lot of challenges, emotional, financial, and systemic, which we'll try to talk about and at least initiate certain conversations today, like Mamta said. But yeah, I think it's very difficult to navigate, and wouldn't say that it's less of a roller coaster ride. But I mean, yeah, I'm very excited for this. Yeah, Maggie, over to you.
Great.
Thank you,
Sorry for
Isha.
the
Thank
long
you.
intro.
Sure. Thank you. No, no. Thank you, Isha. And thank you for that line that will stay with us. With great purpose comes great energy. I think something all of us will also resonate with, at least at the nudge here. So, Maggie, over to you for you to share your own journey into the social sector and your thoughts on the topic.
Absolutely. Yeah, so Maragathavalli, I joined recently. I'm going to be completing 5 months in a few days. So with the nudge, my journey has been short, but I've been with the social impact sector for over 7 years now. And Isha said so many things beautifully. What drives people here is the joy that comes from seeing the needle move in the society. And for me, working in the people and culture side of things, I've also have the double joy of staying in the back end and enabling all of the people to go and do their work out in the field, and that brings with it its own joy. And what I've seen over the years is, one of the biggest benefits of working in the sector is that you work with people with great passion and energy. Nobody around you is there just to tick a box. Everyone is there with a purpose. And so not only the people whose lives you are, trying to elevate, but even your colleagues bring you that energy, and that is a joy in coming into work every morning. So here, we don't deal with the usual question of people not having purpose or not getting up in the morning and thinking about, do I really have to go into work? Those are solved. So what we then solve for in terms of the mental health, and like Isha said, it's not spoken a lot. I want to just take a bit on the superhero thing. Isha likes superheroes, and I think everybody at the Nudge, not only Nudge in the sector, feels like a superhero because they are able to bring about a transformation. But that also brings an immense pressure. Not only are you responsible for your life, you are responsible for the society. So there's a bit of more weight one carries than their peers. And with that comes that day in and day out wearing out. So unless someone takes a step, takes a conscious effort to monitor their mental health, this can dwindle into burnout and physical, impact due to the stress. We'll talk more about it, but that's how I've seen this in the sector.
Thank you, Maggie, for touching upon those very critical aspects of mental health and how it can play on both sides of the spectrum as we bring ourselves to work on a daily basis. Uh, Delving a little more into that, the journey of working closely, especially with vulnerable communities like we do with our programs, can incite a range of emotional responses at a very personal level coming from our own individual experiences, right? And this can affect the way we show up at work. And in some cases, this empathy and ability to place oneself in another's shoes can help drive effective solutions and innovation. But on the other hand, it can also blur some boundaries for us. So what are the kinds of impact you have seen on the ground and in amongst professionals, and what are the corresponding underlying uncertainties that sort of bring this to light? Maggie, if we can begin with you and speak about a more sector level sort of uncertainties that prevail.
Yeah, great question. Um, because uncertainty is there everywhere. In fact, government is two of the most, things that cause stress, anxiety, and in that he puts uncertainty as one of them. Not another one is not having control. Um, in the sector, especially in India, we work with a huge population that in the at the Nudge we work with people who are ultra poor. So every social organization probably works with that kind of a vulnerable sector of the society. And then we're also working with this entire system that itself is uncertain, right? Like it's not like we can get up in the morning and make sure that our commute is going to be easy and we can get to work. At least in Bangalore, even something like traffic is uncertain. So the laws change, the systems change, the rules and regulations change. Recently, SEBI has been changing rules. Before that, FCRA rules have been changing. So when you're working in a landscape where these regulations can unexpectedly come and stop you from doing your work, that is one big uncertainty the sector deals with. Um, and besides that, there is there is also how you are raising funds and what kind of funds, and that determine enable also limit how much work you can do. So there is that whole angle of it that comes into play. So this sector that way has both the regulatory level as well as funding level uncertainties people deal with. Isha, I think you can add more being on the field and seeing what how these really come to life.
Hey, thanks, Maggie. I mean, there are so many parts of the sector which you already touched upon, and I think since I work with the team, which is so passionate, it I feel it like quite close, right? So I'll maybe talk about at an individual level how it affects, while you touched upon certain sector level uncertainties. I think when the work directly impacts the lives, I mean, I've heard it many times from the team to get it right, the first time, uh, because there is a repercussion, somebody's health, somebody's future, and especially for the vulnerable communities, um, it becomes more important that we take care of, that whether they are in poverty or in some inequity or excluded from a community. um, what fuels our passion can also take an emotional toll over time, leading to exhaustion. In fact, sometimes even, I think there's a coined term for compassion fatigue. So it's no longer just a job, but you need to be committed to do better, not just yourself, but also take the program together with the community and to do better. It's a long toll, I feel, and I have like huge appreciation for the team that's on ground and continuously work, frankly. Um, and then, like in startups, like where you mentioned something about longevity of the program, right? So there is a certain slowness of the visible impact, right? Like you work and the programs are 3 years. Now we are so used to the short-term instant gratification through Instagram,
Yeah,
and I'm sure
yeah.
you will add on to this, Maggie. Would love to hear it from you. Um, that this slowness actually also creates a frustration. I have faced it multiple times, I think. So I wouldn't want to deny it. Right. Yeah. And I think the other factor, Maggie, which I think affects the program is like in the Nudge, we have programs running across some, I don't know, 8 to 10 states, correct me if I'm wrong.
Mhm.
And many people are working remote, rural locations, difficult ones, difficult terrains, away from
Yeah,
family, away from, the general support system, which we call friends, social circle, people we meet in cities and so on. But they often shrink, and we're not able to really share and communicate this sudden loneliness that comes while you're continuously contributing, but there's a sudden loneliness that comes in, I think. That can also, I think, affect a day-to-day job. and I'm speaking on behalf of so many people who spoke about this when this topic came to me on LinkedIn. So I would want to thank the entire team for actually contributing to these talking points, frankly. But I think, yeah, I don't know. I feel that because I came from the corporate world, I also had these people who could coach me, like angelic figures, helping me out through career pathways, uh, also helping me figure out if I'm unclear on my goals and so on. Peer learning was much more structured, and I know we are trying to do that here as well. But I mean, but for I'm talking in for the sector in general, this is not really clear and structured in the sector. You don't know what you will do after this, right? Yeah, and I don't know how, Maggie, this affects in, for example, hiring or retaining people and so on. I really don't know. Maybe you can talk about it. Yeah,
Right.
but I'm
So,
talking from the day-to-day life level. Yeah.
right. Isha, thank you so much for giving us a picture of what it looks like to actually be in that situation, right? To be in the middle of these sort of uncertainties. While we continue the conversation, I'd also like to call out that we will take questions towards the end of the session. So I do encourage our audiences to share their questions, comments, thoughts with us in the comment section. And we'll try and address all of them towards the end of the session. We'll get Isha and Maggie also to respond to them from the nudges perspective. So please feel free to share your comments and questions. I think, like you said, how it affects hiring or engagement, Isha. I'll take the question to Maggie again and try to touch upon how institutional initiatives speak to these sort of aspects within an organization, both at an individual level as well as a community level. And when I say community, I mean a community of nudsters. It
Hmm.
could be at a team level, it could be at a location, geographic specific level. What are the organizational initiatives that sort of speak to these more directly?
Um, yeah, fantastic. And Isha, like you said, yeah, these are not easy questions we tackle within the team when we talk about how to hire, how to retain, especially how to give clarity to somebody when they come and ask, okay, I've done this program, what next? What exactly to tell them? Um, and while going to policies, a quick addition to the loneliness you talked about, Isha, it's yes, people are staying away from their families and doing this. But there's also one more thing that comes is a lot of us take this path against our family's wishes because families typically want you to take the very safe trodden path, become an engineer, go into IT, whatever, like earn a predictable salary and stuff like that. So there is a bit of loneliness, and back at home, people not really understanding what you're doing. That also happens, which brings me to the community because then the Nutster community becomes important because here you're heard, you're seen, you're able to debate and talk about things, exchange ideas. Um, so what we are doing here at least is trying to build these communities where we can, yes, of course, at the work level there is a lot of cohesion. People work together in a program as like a close knit family almost. But can we also speak outside of work? Can we have common interests on which we come together and do things, maybe hobby spaces. Another thing we are working on right now is a dialogue space where we can exchange ideas with people and talk to each other about what does equality mean, for instance, in the society. What does hierarchy mean? How do we work with it? Uh, because this work is intensely personal. The work we do as part of social sector is very personal, and we need to have those spaces where we can interact with each other outside of this. And also at the team level, maybe like until, let's say, 20, 30 years ago, working in the sector meant sacrificing a lot of things and really putting you out there. But today, thankfully, we have evolved so much that we can actually have org level initiatives and do things like team offsites or step backs. Because especially when you want to create impact at scale, we cannot just be in that I'm burning my midnight oil to create change mode, which will happen only with one person. We only want to create at an org level. At least at the nudge, I know that the engagement team coordinates huddles and offsites for people to come together, step outside the office, have a little bit of fun, but then think of the strategy, think of where we are and where to go next, so that we can do it in a little bit more sane way. It's like I was telling my team yesterday, uh, how can you make the impact like Gandhi did without having to live in an ashram? That's the kind of thing we're trying to do within the nudge through some of the programs we run.
Thanks, Maggie. And Isha, if you could give us a perspective of what it's like to have these initiatives shape up organically within communities. When I say communities, again, nudsters as communities who work in the same space and environment. What your experience on that front has been like.
Yeah, I think like Maggie said, these hobby spaces are really nice where initiatives like I generally feel that's a microculture, right? Because I said we are in multiple states and I'm sure other organizations have already exemplified this before. Can share a few examples, but if you we spoke about the nudge a little, and so I think a lot of these unspoken cultures, I would say, would be like, like today I received a message on my WhatsApp saying that there's a potluck going on in one of the remote locations, and it happened instantaneously. It was just felt a joy, right? And smaller things like this, where you meet up on a Saturday because you like listening to ghazals and then discussing something intellectual after that, or going to a reading circle, reading a book which is actually related to our work. But when you do it alone, maybe it's a little tough, but you do it across. And I think those spaces exist. I wouldn't say they are there that we have it regularly, they are dependable or something. But we are at least, I think, I would give credit to the nutsters who actually take an initiative to do this. But just if you had to zoom out and talk about the sector, I feel there are organizations. At least I have learned so many from people who joined in from TFI, Teach for India, the storytelling spaces. And Maggie, you would at least add to this, I think, where fellows and staff share their personal experience, life maps, and build empathy and emotional resilience through that. And that's important, I feel. Especially for, to have spaces where you can actually share your story, right? Or even like Pratham, for that matter, who has these learning circles to, I think from one of them ideas was to build the report, right? But where team members share the experience, knowledges, like Maggie said, right? To understand hierarchy roles and to break them also. They're not barriers. Therefore, probably running an organization of 400 plus people, you will need certain systems and hierarchy and roles and positions. But that shouldn't stop you from sharing experiences and learnings, right? So I think there are a lot of organizations that have done this in the past and continue to do this. And I at least I think that in the nudge we encourage this, right? To discuss our failures openly, to lead with vulnerability. I think we talk about this quite a bit, whether it's a feedback form, whether it's a one-on-ones. I think I just feel that they're no longer an individual concern. The mental health is no longer my issue per se. It's also a collective issue. It becomes like, I think Maggie said it beautifully, used the word family. And I remember reading a post of, again today, recency bias, all of this, by the way, a LinkedIn post by Inmobi co-founder, who also mentioned the same thing about, yeah, right, you saw that too. So because we're on LinkedIn, I'm just talking about it. But yeah, I think there were posts on how you sharing experiences gives you that care, understanding, and love and belongingness, obviously in the form of Maslow's hierarchy, but gives a bit of a family feeling, which is finally, you want to call it culture or spaces to build empathy, share emotions, and build resilience, so that we can be in this job which is tough, but gives us a lot of sense of joy and pride for longer, right? To do that, we need spaces, I think. But yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to add to Maggie. I don't have much. I just thought I would give some examples.
No, thank you so much, Isha, for that. Thank you for sharing your perspective. We have some questions coming in from the audience, but I do encourage them to share some more questions. We'll take them in a bit. I just want to bring in one more aspect and bring Maggie in to talk about how a lot of these initiatives that we do in consideration of building a culture centric environment for nudsters. Could you take us through some of the examples, some of the initiatives landing successfully and in a way that has empowered nudsters, that has empowered professionals in their own professional trajectories, even within and outside the organization? Because as much as we talk about mental health, the natural connotation happens to be negative. But I think the idea of this conversation is also to build out how this experience in the social sector and this interfacing with vulnerable communities and problems can, in fact, even enrich your position as a professional and your perspective to problem solving as a professional. So, Maggie, just want to bring in your thoughts on this.
Um, if I have to talk about it from the nudge perspective, I think one of the things we do really well is bring in different teams to talk about what they do via some of the all hands kind of things we have, so that there is a window into the world of what somebody else is doing. Now, just to give some context, when you're working on the field and you're trying to run these programs, yes, the pace of impact is slow, but the landscape also changes sometimes very suddenly. Suddenly, you get a donor who comes and says, "I want to do this," and you partner with them. There are new things happening all the time as well, besides this longish programs. Um, and the ability to understand all of this, and also the independence and the freedom to pick and choose what you want to work in, is that some of the things that is very much available for something like the nudge. The other thing we also work really keenly on, and we are building this out, is looking at different, the lifestyle related career support somebody would need. Um, because that is something I've been observing also. Where someone is at their life also has an impact of how they can show up, especially in the sector, because of what the sector needs from somebody in terms of time commitment and in terms of um, energy commitment and all of that. So, at different lifestyles, people may need different kinds of coaching, handholding in terms of career for them to build a successful career in this sector. So, that is one more thing we are working on to see how we can enable people to do that. And that is not, again, an easy thing. Because oftentimes people come into the sector as a generalist because there is a passion, I want to do something, so I come in, and this is all lifestyle related stuff, so you can jump in and just do things. But as you start working, you realize you need something more specialized. For example, I know that Asha Kiran works with goat tree, so understanding what that means, what livestock means to a Didi living in that remote village, what does it mean to live in that village, these are all become like more and more specialized, where you have to work with experts and build expertise in as well. If you look at some of the big names in the social sector, you know that they have spent decades, be it solid waste management, be it, um, Sahas, for example, is a name that like people have gone really deep into some of these things to build expertise so that they can create impact. So that is one more thing we are making a shift towards and looking at how we can build that kind of expertise. So these are some of the things we are doing, from providing a support systemically for people to stay with the sector, and which is also aligned to the challenges they feel both from the personal lifestyle front as well as what is happening at the work front. I'm not sure if I answered the question you had, but this is something I thought I wanted to bring in anyways. So you're on mute, Mamta.
So that's a great, good food for thought, Maggie. Thank you for responding to that. That actually brings me to my next point, which I want to bring Isha in for. And I remember, Isha, we discussed this where we spoke about peer support and peer learning environments and how that sort of supports your own situation and trajectory within the organization. And given that it is a fairly nascent space, building that peer support for yourself within the organization and having people that you can learn from or spaces, platforms that you can learn from becomes so much more important for you to even feel confident about your own situation and trajectory. And I remember, since we spoke about it, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this aspect.
Yeah, interestingly, it's very like also I would say leader driven and people driven. This learning part, right? People have to be willing to learn and have the capacity, which I mean time and space, to be able to absorb new information, process it, and then create something. Creating is the last step, right? In the learning, I'm not an expert, but trying to put it in the learning framework. So I definitely think that learning by peer circle one way is really good because you first find a relatable person you can share, um, normalize the conversation issues with the stress you're going through, right? Like because of whatever issues you're facing on ground, and to then mix it up with a structured conversation, helps regularly. This, if you do it, I think this helps, and I think that's been useful for us in a way. At I think two parts to it. One is, I think, from a policy point of view, the nudge has given us some L&D wallets. As leaders, we try to promote that, and we say that use the wallet for your best use, and based on your 360-degree feedback, and based on the trajectory you want to grow in life, and so on. But I think a lot of it is informal, just across the table, just walking across a room and doing it, is what we know as knowledge sharing, I would say. And there have been specific people who have taken initiative in sharing user stories from the ground, across, right? Sharing impact stories, writing blogs and articles, whatever they're good at. Uh, One key thing in all of it is, I think, in the learning spaces, that you should feel safe, right, to share. And safe, when I say, is a very uh, mental health word, I would say. But a safe space, when I mean, is that to be able to embrace your strength, to be able to embrace the knowledge and wisdom you have, or the doubts you have, and be able to share it with a peer, is peer or peers, helps in the learning. And I think there are examples within the nudge and beyond as well. Some examples I quoted. There are learning circles. I think the social sector, has a lot of examples in this. We see those examples on LinkedIn. We see those examples on Startup World, the founders sharing how their failure journeys were. And I think there are enough conferences now to discuss just failures and vulnerabilities and so on. It's just a starting of the moment, I feel. But Mamta, I don't know whether I touched upon anything else, but I talk about learning with quite passion. It's a
Yeah.
key thing, not just for changing human behavior, but also for us, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I think Isha, the two things that stood out to me when you were speaking were one is agency, having that opportunity to take up your institutional policies and work through them for your benefit, having that environment that supports and encourages this agency of yours to take your your professional trajectory in a certain direction. I think that is one of the things that even I have experienced, and it really empowers you to do your work better, or even imagine your own trajectory within the sector. Because otherwise, the uncertainties of the sector and the externalization of it can play a role in the way that you imagine your own longevity in the sector. I think this agency sort of grounds you and builds a sort of resilience within you to commit to the sector in a way. So yeah, definitely that is something that I have experienced as well, as a personal thing. We'll just quickly take a question from the audience before we get back to our conversation. I'd like to take a question that says, my question is, as a manager, how do you create a safe space around team level fatigue or burnout? Here I'd like to take the question to Maggie, because this can happen with the way the sector itself functions. Programs, like we touched upon it earlier, longevity, funding. There are so many aspects that affect a team at a team level. So the collective environment also gets affected, where you cannot really rely on your peers to bring you back to that sort of energy levels again. So how do we work around that?
A great question and very important question as well. Uh, the first thing is, one, we cannot wait until something happens to create the safe space. Safe space should be a given. So right from the beginning, create some spaces where the team can approach and talk about multiple different things, and also create a culture where it is okay to discuss doubts, vulnerabilities, um, and not knowing how to do something. Like, it's okay to ask questions, okay to be dumb, and okay to say I'm stressed about this. So creating that right from the beginning helps so that people can open up and talk. And watching out for symptoms will also help us find out, okay, what's going on with somebody. Noticing it early on, someone getting sick very often, or a sudden drop in the performance of work. These are not signs that someone is not engaged, but these are signs that something is going on. So being curious and being empathetic about somebody rather than always looking at it from a performance judging lens also helps. These are two characteristics anybody should build in the team for a culture that is supportive of each other.
Right.
Anything you would like to add, Isha, from your experience?
No,
Maggie, I think the question was on a manager, so I don't. I was just thinking that you and me both have played the role, right? So you've covered it all actually, to create that trust and space and normalize the conversation, not to create a stigma
Normal,
around it.
exactly. Normalize the conversation.
Like, I
So
mean, not to
what I
let the
like,
person be in a panic zone, na? Like, उसको
right?
थोड़ा stretch zone में रखो, challenge करते हैं. Let's challenge the people. Let's challenge them for their strengths, for their weaknesses, improve on their skills, and not
Right.
let it be a state of panic. कि अरे क्या होगा मेरा,
yeah.
and all of that, I
I
guess.
think, like, when you were speaking, Isha, I said two things that struck me. One was that agency. The second was definitely about the aspect of failure and having the space to fail and fail also successfully in a way that you are able to pick up from that failure or learn from that failure and not be sort of in fear of what's going to be the repercussion of that. I
Yeah.
think building that environment around people to be able to experiment and innovate, because that's the only way solutions have come about, even at the nudge. And it's one of our spirits as well. So to be able to build that sort of muscle to fail fast, like we call it at the nudge, right? To be able to build and not remain in fear of what's going to happen if I experiment a different solution. And that also brings in a certain amount of it's a self-rewarding exercise, and that builds a sort of resilience and once again commitment towards committing to your work. So I think that's one of the great aspects that stood out again in that part of the conversation. Another question that I'd like to take up is again from the audience around burnout, emotional exhaustion, and financial insecurities, which are common in the social sector. What are the strategies or support systems that can be implemented to ensure mental health and emotional resilience of social workers, grassroots change makers, and nonprofit leaders? So I think we have largely tried to address this from an organizational perspective. But if we were to zoom in and specifically talk about nudsters or social sector professionals who directly interface with communities as change makers, as grassroots professionals, what are the sort of challenges or uncertainties they face? What are the insecurities that generally happen to be a part of their day to day? And what are the initiatives that can, uh, guide them through those sort of challenges?
Do you want to
Yeah,
start?
it will be a little tough to speak on behalf of people, but because the question has been asked, I'll just probably try to attempt at it. Now, see, the emotional reality of the person who's actually working with a person who's excluded, facing poverty shocks, and so on is very difficult, right? Like, it's very difficult to understand the emotional reality of a person, what they're going through. And the support system, like we've already iterated some, like the listening circles, peer learning circles, however we want to call it, those definitely help in just uh, discussing this a little more openly. That said and done, I think one point over there was about pay and I think about, if I'm not
Financial
mistaken, something about the
insecurities.
financial.
Financial.
Yeah, I don't want to miss that out, frankly, Maggie,
Yeah.
because as a sector, we've not been able to solve this. It's been decades now, and wouldn't want to shy away from calling it that. We definitely have a huge pay gap, right? Me, Maggie, Mamta, I'm sure you also would have taken a huge pay, I know, like a salary
Yeah.
cut, if I have to put it, when compared to what we do versus a for-profit startup or the corporate sector. So passion keeps us rolling, but these financial uncertainties, or at some point in your life stage, when you get married, you have kids, or you have pets, or you want to build your own farm, you will need savings. And at that point, you feel that, oh, am I losing on an opportunity? And that becomes a concern. So I'm not at all for one saying that we've solved it. And is there a strategy around it? Yes, there could be. We could come together, raise some funds for all the employees in the sector and do it. You can also sponsor him. I know I'm not sure whether this is in the nudge or not, but I'm speaking for the sector. You could definitely figure out ways to solve for it as individuals who are listening to this conversation, right? In your own capacity. But in our own capacity, if we don't have the money, then please at least be a listening person, be an ally to someone who's in the sector. I think I won't have a very structural strategy here, Maggie. It's a very individual level and a pure level strategy, which I'm saying. But Maggie, I would love to hear you on this because of your expertise as well, from across the sector, right? Not just from this.
Right. So, when talking about uh, the individuals on the field, yes, like you said, the peer circles definitely help. Organizationally, yes, we also try to design policies and SOPs to ensure people are safe, people are heard, and they have a place to come to. I'm talking really about these people who work in these remote places. They are the only CDOs that are working with a bunch of villagers. A way for them to come back to us in case they need any kind of help. That is something we're trying to provide organizationally, and it's been working also. In fact, 2 days ago, I was talking to somebody who lives in a remote village in Gujarat, and she said, "My boss lives 300 kilometers away. My home is 500 kilometers away, but I'm here doing the work." Thankfully, today we have at least cell phones to be able to reach out to these people. On the financial insecurity, it is a reality, like Isha said, which is a factor. Although today more and more donors are opening up to giving what we call as UR, unrestricted fund, which allows us to take care of some of these things. For example, at the NEDGE, we have a very comprehensive health insurance, right? And and sometimes, what is actually also interesting is a lot of people who are in the sector. I'm not justifying it. I'm just explaining it. We also come in with very minimal needs for our life. It's like, okay, health insurance and some of these things. Our aspirations are not about having the biggest car or the biggest house. Um, so a lot of us consciously choose a simpler life, which is not a justification. It is just something that helps us work with what we have. Um, but it is
I
going
think
to be paradox of working here is we are creating an impact that is going to be futuristic, but which means in the present we are probably making some compromises.
Right. I think, Maggie, this is something that has come up in several of our sessions in Jigyasa, and something that comes up in various platforms and conversations with audiences, and something that we always try to understand from audiences and from masters' perspectives is also how prepared they have been or are to take to make that sort of lifestyle change, right? So it's a
Yeah.
very personal decision about their own situation and life stage that they're in, and if they are willing to do that, because it's sort of a very personal, intrinsic, motivation driven decision, and if they are willing to offset a certain amount of financial gain versus the impact that they're able to create, or the proximity with which they're working with communities, or the kind of work, the nature of the work that they're involved in, right? So it becomes a very individual, personal decision to move into the organization. And I do understand that it is a question that comes up quite a bit, because it is work at the end of the day, and we're doing it in our professional capacity. But the great part is that we are starting to have these conversations. We're trying to address this, and Maggie, you obviously will be able to speak a little more to it. There are a lot of initiatives at our end as well to try and push the needle on this, and there is momentum in terms of benchmarking and trying to understand what is it that what is the gap, and what is it that will help people situate themselves better to commit to the sector, and comfortably without any hindrances, you know stay with the sector.
Right, like you said, benchmarking is one thing we are doing to kind of bring us to a place which is where you're saying at least the basics of a lifestyle expectations are met, right? I just want to add one fact, data point here is while we talk about all of this, if I go back and look at the attrition data and look at the attrition reasons, compensation is not on the top three. No, it's the other things, which is very interesting. In spite of all the anxiety we have around it, that is not the reason why people leave the sector. So I'm not saying that is never the reason, but that's not the top reason why people leave the sector. But that is one thing, and we're looking at a lot of other benefits. Oftentimes life is about living a life comfortably, not necessarily about having money in the bank. But that comes in when there is a definitely when there's an issue, you need it. I've heard one of the youngsters say something like something as simple as having snacks all around and just having breakfast available in the office. These are all small, small perks that just make life so much easier to and then feel cared for and held together. Wha- Isha, in Bangalore now we have detox water in the office because it's summer. So the
So I
small, small
think,
things that show they care. These are benefits in kind. I would say there is some, yes, there is money that goes in, but there's a lot we can do when we start thinking about how to make someone's life cared for, healthy, and supported, and those are things we are investing in as well.
Right. I think that's really interesting, Maggie, because in creating those safe spaces and those spaces where all of us can come together as people versus as professionals and share our vulnerabilities and share our little joys of the day as well, right? So I think building those spaces has been significant in building momentum towards a more, healthy mental health or physical health, emotional health, healthy environments for work in the context of the nudge, at least. Um, Isha, there was something that we spoke about in terms of access for, access in terms of institutionalized, maybe could be through counseling, it could be through access, having that sort of backup in terms of, medical insurance, etc. How does that sort of plays a role, even as we speak about financial insecurity or security, having access to these things sort of also puts you in a slightly more secure position. So would you be able to speak to that?
Yeah, I think one good thing I would say, what I've experienced in the nudge as well as externally, I've heard a lot about this across new age organizations, I would call it, is that there is a lot of collaboration with mental health professionals, and to give on call counseling services, insurance providers providing those packages as well, which is very unlikely, right? But there is a because of the overall awareness across sectors on mental health, structural systems are coming in place. So I think an issue which what you said, access, right? If you just look back to the previous question, and then there was something around grassroots communities, how do we when we work with them, and how do we give them more access, if I have to put it right, like to just say that okay, on call counseling services are there. If there could be even mental health resources, right? How to have these conversation, just to say that before, if somebody is stressed out, and you, like Maggie said, if you can figure it out, if you can just look at the person and figure out that there's something different, like looks stressed, looks broke, whatever, down on energy and so on, what you should do at that point, not many of us know, right? Even just sensitization on mental health is very high, but just to be able to practice it, to say that, oh, I can listen in, or I can problem solve with you, or I can um, help out, I can actually come with you, be that person who's just behind you when you're talking, right? Those very small things, these resource, I'm calling these resources, right? Like, when you have to design a program, this is the process you follow: discover, define, iterate, test, fail, and then again, you know come back. But in mental health, there are resources like that, with various and I think mental health professionals are really good at it, and documenting it through either a cognitive behavior therapy, or any other methods which the sector is evolving in. And talking with the mental health sector, those resources can be made, I think, available more in different. Maybe it's now limited to a particular language, or if I have to put it like that's the constraint. If I have to like be very
Hmm.
very uh, critical about our work, right?
Right.
Yeah, we could maybe transform it to language friendly, or make it more relatable. Understand how do you have a gender
Hmm.
context conversation, male manager having it with a female like all of these issues come up, and I think to be able to address those, also access these resources, as I have to put it. How do you have structured check-in calls, structured conversation? That's where I think I was referring to, not telling to detach from the core emotion, but but both of them being into the emotional game in a professional setting. I'm really not sure whether that will lead to somewhere. So you do a check-in, but maybe have resources around it to help the person. Yeah, we're
I think.
not professionals in this, right? So yeah.
Right. But Isha, is even as you're speaking, a lot of it that is standing out to me and is very exciting is the fact that a lot of this is something which is sort of set in motion, and Maggie will agree. As a part of the PNC People and Culture Initiatives and the engagement team engaging with teams across geographies in the country, I think a lot of it is set in motion. There has been a lot of momentum in that space, and the wonderful part is that we are aware of the road that lies ahead of us and where we want to get at. We sort of have charted these journeys in a way that we want to build this systematically have this access across the board in many languages, in across levels, and as much ease as possible. So, even as we begin to conclude the session, Maggie, I'd like to bring you in to speak a little bit about the kinds of initiatives that can be effective in this space. A lot of which is already, like I said, set in motion from our end, and the kind of objectives we imagine and the outcomes we see or we aim towards in these initiatives.
Yeah, I'll take a couple of, say a couple of examples from the bench, and then I can talk more generally about the sector as well. Some of the things that we have set in motion, one of the things is the unlimited leave policy that we have, which is like unlikely or unusual even for a for-profit sector. This is clearly designed with the idea that people should be able to take a break, and they don't have to worry about, do I have leave balance to take a break. Uh, and that's like just fantastic. And I've seen people being really relieved and being able to take that time off and put their effort into doing something for their personal care. Right, that's one. And second is, we run the engagement survey, and that is something we take so seriously. Again, much better than many of the for-profit companies I've seen, where there is a real care about the people who work with us, and hence understanding where everyone stands, so that we can take initiatives to ensure that they are well cared for. And the engagement survey measures everything from some of the things we talked about: fear of failure. It talks about that. It talks about autonomy. It talks about um, how are the policies? Is my leadership and managers, are they helping me? So we look at everything about how an employee is experiencing the social sector, especially the nudge, and then we build initiatives around that. We have rolled out many training programs, both at an individual personal level for them to be more efficient, as well as a manager to manage teams. And these include both personal care as well as being professionally efficient. And overall at the sector, just thinking of what works for your organization, when you consider all of these people are human beings who are taking that extra effort to go beyond their comfort zone to be there and be of use to the society. How can you make their lives easy? If you have somebody in your team constantly thinking about it, that will automatically bring in a lot of unique things that will work for every organization. It's not rocket science. It's just, I think, treating people as people and listening to them and allowing them to be completely who they are. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Maggie. That's a great note for us to conclude on, Isha. And I also like to bring you in for your final thoughts on what you see ahead in terms of challenges and opportunities for this intersectional space between social sector and mental health overall.
Oh wow, very tough one, but I'll try to do my way. So I think we did spend a lot of time on the challenge part of it, and a key thing which we were talking about is uncertainty and the anxiety that comes through it, or the stress that comes through it. And we can, I think, most of us would agree that anxiety either goes with time or action, right? So, and it is an individual and collective responsibility we do it, both at a personal level we should be willing to talk about it, at a peer level to be able to be an ally, and at an organization level to figure out structures and systems or policies and funding for that matter to be able to help others here, right? That's how I see it as an opportunity because of the challenges we spoke about. But I do see that giving it all, it's a lot about action and not just about. I think there are a lot of thoughts. We spoke about them and we've been, I think, repeating it in a way. And it's sector agnostic actually. But very simply put, either we give it time, and say that we'll get into the wave, the social sector will get into the wave of mental health and we'll talk about it more. And someday that, we'll rise and we'll showcase, or we actually act on it today. Each one of us promise to be an ally to another person, create such circles, create what we talked about, build them, think about it. And obviously, as an organization, Maggie to say, but I, I would still say as a manager and as a co-lead for a program, It's so difficult, it's so challenging because of the complexities in the sector. We're constantly solving smaller problems, getting these KPIs done and linking it to Didi goals, Didi needs, motivations, and so on. And then we say, oh, people issue. तो हम बोल देते हैं हाँ तुम्हें ज़्यादा काम करने मतलब हाँ we can lightly say also ना ज़्यादा काम करने की क्या ज़रूरत है, खुशी मिलती है ना, ठीक है. But to also say that नहीं, काम तो उसमें है, he has the passion, he or she has the passion, and to fuel it by just listening in, I think is enough. I do see it as a challenge. I don't think we're capable of listening in. We are a very expressive generation, including me. And I don't think I should summarize this conversation, Mamta. Please do the job from my end. But
No, I think, Isha, that was great. The way you said promise to be an ally. I think it's so important for us to even have these conversations, and we are very much aware of the fact that the road ahead is long, it's challenging, it's winding, it's all of that. But I think the very fact that we're willing to have these conversations, talk about these vulnerabilities, will probably bring in more perspectives to the room and more voices to talk about these challenges. And even within that, solutions will emerge, and sort of landscape that is more willing to be empathetic to these issues or the possibility of these issues, and then be able to navigate through them. I think that's one of the biggest highlights that we're that's coming out from this conversation, and something that we're hoping to achieve as well. It's not something that you can conquer in a day or a year or even just one initiative. It's very important that we continue to have these conversations and just get the ball rolling. And that promise to be an ally is applicable at an individual level, at a team level, or even at an organization level. When we talk about the sector, if more organizations are willing to talk about it, a collaborative solution is not far away, because the issues, like you said, they're not sector specific, they are sector agnostic. This is not true only for the nudge or the sector, it is true for organizations, it's true for professionals in any field. So I think just getting that ball rolling and having this conversation today, I think, has been really cool. And I'm really glad that Isha and Maggie, both of you, agreed to be a part of it and sort of get this conversation going. And today, I'd also like to thank all of our audience for joining in, sharing questions, listening to us, and being a part of this really important conversation. We hope that you will stay in touch with us through our Jigyasa editions going forward across topics. And please do visit our website for opportunities at the Nudge. And thank you for joining us today once again. Thank you, Isha and Maggie.
Thank you, Mamta, and thanks everyone.
thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.